All right, today we are jumping into one of the most incredible origin stories you will ever hear. Seriously, it's got everything: secrets, danger, survival, and a destiny that is literally going to change the entire world. This is the story of Moses, kicking off in Exodus chapter 2.
So, think about this. It all begins with these impossible choices, right under the shadow of a death sentence. You've got a secret that means certain death if it gets out. You've got a choice that could defy an entire empire. And you've got a crime of passion that turns a prince into a man on the run. So how does it all go down? Let's get into it.
So our story opens in Egypt, and it is a dark, dark time. The Hebrews are enslaved, and there's a terrible decree from Pharaoh. Every single newborn Hebrew boy is to be killed. But right in the middle of all that fear, our story starts with this incredible act of desperate hope. Okay, verse 1. It starts simple, an act of love in a really terrifying time. A man and a woman, both from the tribe of Levi, they get married. Just picture this for a second. A quiet, secret ceremony. Their faces are this mix of joy, but also total fear. Then, in verse 2, a son is born. And his mother, Jochebed, she looks at this beautiful baby, and she just knows there is no way she's letting anyone take him. For 3 long months, their home becomes this fortress of silence. Every little cry, every whimper is a huge risk.
Moving to verse 3, the baby's getting bigger. His cries are getting louder, and she knows she can't hide him anymore. So she does something incredible. She builds a tiny little boat, an ark made of reeds. Can you just imagine her hands working so fast, weaving those stalks together, and then smearing that thick, black, sticky pitch all over it, sealing every single crack to make it waterproof? She puts her baby inside and places him in the reeds of the Nile River. And then, verse 4, his big sister Miriam stands watching from a distance. Picture that. A brave little girl, just a silhouette hiding in the tall grass, her eyes absolutely glued to that little floating basket.
Verse 5 is where destiny just steps in. Who comes down to that exact spot on the river to bathe? None other than Pharaoh's own daughter. She spots the basket, and in verse 6, she tells her maid to go get it. She opens the lid, and the baby starts to cry. And you know, that single sound changes absolutely everything. She could have followed her father's brutal law, but instead, seeing this tiny, weeping child, her heart just breaks. She has compassion on him. She knows right away who he is, saying this is one of the Hebrews' children.
And this is where Miriam, the sister, makes her move. It's brilliant. In verse 7, she runs out from the reeds and says to the princess, "Hey, should I go find a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for you?" The princess says yes. So in verses 8 and 9, who does Miriam bring back? Their own mother. I mean, think about the irony here. It's just incredible. Jochebed is now being paid by the Egyptian royal family to safely nurse her own son. What a twist.
Verse 10 marks a huge transition. Once the boy is weaned, his mother has to bring him back to the princess. You can just feel that bittersweet moment, right? Handing over her son so he can live. He's officially adopted into the house of Pharaoh. He becomes a prince of Egypt, and he's given a name that will echo through history: Moses. And this name is everything. It literally means to draw out. The princess says she chose it because she drew him out of the water of the Nile. But it's this perfect, almost cosmic foreshadowing of his ultimate destiny, isn't it? Because one day, he's going to draw his entire people out of slavery in Egypt. So the years fly by. The baby in the basket is now a grown man, a prince of Egypt. But he can't escape his roots, and he can't ignore the suffering of his people. And that brings us to the second, much more violent part of our story.
Okay, verse 11. A grown-up Moses goes out and sees for himself the brutal reality his people are facing. He watches an Egyptian slave driver just mercilessly beating a Hebrew slave. And in that moment, something inside him just snaps. Verse 12 is so fast and shocking. He quickly looks around, sees no one is watching, and he kills the Egyptian. Then he frantically buries the body in the sand. It's this sudden, impulsive, violent act that's about to change his life forever.
Now Moses thinks he got away with it. His secret is safe, or so he believes. So in verse 13, he goes out the very next day, and this time he sees 2 of his own people, 2 Hebrews, fighting. He steps in trying to play the peacemaker, and he asks the guy who started it, "Hey, why are you hitting your brother? He's trying to act like a leader." But the reply he gets back in verse 14, it's like a dagger to the heart. The man sneers at him, "Who made you a prince and a judge over us?" And then he drops this bombshell question. That's the moment Moses' blood runs cold.
In that single instant he knows, his secret is out. He is completely exposed.
His act of rage wasn't a secret after all. His life as a prince is completely over. Now he has no choice but to become a fugitive. So, verse 15 spells out the immediate fallout. The news travels fast, all the way to Pharaoh, who immediately puts out a death warrant for Moses. So he has to run. Just picture him, a prince one day, now fleeing Egypt with nothing, a lone figure stumbling through that vast, empty desert. Finally, he collapses, exhausted, by a well in a foreign land called Midian.
And I mean, look at this timeline. The speed of his fall is just dizzying. In the span of just a couple of days, he goes from being a powerful prince in Egypt to a wanted fugitive running for his life to a complete and nameless stranger in the middle of nowhere.
But even out here, as a broken man, his true character shines through. Verse 16 tells us that 7 daughters of the local priest show up at the well to water their flock. Then, in verse 17, some other shepherds come and try to bully them and drive them away. And Moses, this exhausted fugitive, he doesn't hesitate. He stands up, defends the women, and then waters their entire flock for them.
And that one simple act of kindness changes his whole situation. In verses 18 through 21, the women run home to their father, Reuel, and tell him what happened. An Egyptian, they say, saved us. Reuel immediately invites Moses to stay for a meal, which turns into an invitation to live with them, and eventually this leads to Moses marrying one of the daughters, a woman named Zipporah.
Then, in verse 22, he has a son. And the name he gives him tells you everything you need to know about how Moses feels inside. He names him Gershom. Why? Because in his own words, I have been a stranger in a foreign land. You see, even with a new family and a new life, he still feels like an exile. He still doesn't truly belong anywhere.
So while Moses is off building this quiet new life as a shepherd in a foreign land, back in Egypt, the suffering of his people just gets worse and worse. And this is where the camera kind of pulls back. We zoom out from one man's personal story to a much larger, divine story that's about to unfold. Verse 23 tells us that a lot of time has gone by. The Pharaoh who wanted Moses dead, he's gone now. But it doesn't matter. The slavery only gets worse under the new guy. The pain of the Israelites becomes so deep, so all-consuming, that the Bible describes it as a single collective groan, a cry of pure agony that finally rises all the way up to heaven. And right here, this is the pivot point on which all of history is about to turn. Verse 24, so God heard their groaning. Their suffering was not going unnoticed. And when God heard their cry, he remembered. He remembered his promise, his sacred covenant.
And this wasn't just some casual promise. This was the promise. This was the foundational vow that God had made generations ago to their forefathers, to Abraham, to his son Isaac, and to his son Jacob. It was the very promise that had made them a people in the first place.
And the chapter closes with this powerful, decisive action in verse 25. God looked upon the children of Israel, and it says God acknowledged them. Now that's more than just seeing. It means he recognized their plight, he took notice of their suffering, and he was about to do something about it. They were no longer forgotten.
And that leaves us right on the edge of our seats, doesn't it? We've got a fugitive shepherd in exile who has no idea his life is about to be turned upside down. We have an entire nation of people crying out for a savior, and we have a God who is listening and is finally ready to act. So the only question left is, what happens next?